Hello, this is Spellbinder with this news report of the financial world. Corruption is destroying the U.S. economy. By George, I think the mass media, or at least part of it, has finally gotten a clue. We've been saying this for how long? 10, 15 years? Widespread government and corporate corruption, and not just the banking, is destroying the U.S. economy and thus the livelihoods and standards of living of tens of millions of Americans. Thanks Obama, thanks Bush Jr., thanks Clinton, thanks Bush Sr., and thanks Reagan. There's always been corruption in the U.S., but it's hit warp speed under these posing idiots and moral midgets, and we will be paying the price for this for many years to come. And still the band plays on CNBC, Fox, CNN, and others. Listen, watch this.
I want to bring in Chris Whalen. He's Senior Vice President at Institutional Risk Analytics and one of the foremost authorities on the dysfunction in our financial system, why we put so much money in and get so little out of it, how they're exploiting us. He is author of the newly released book, Inflated: How Money and Debt Built the American Dream. And it's my pleasure to welcome him to our program. Nice to see you. So we give them all this money.
Right.
What do they do with the money?
Well, primarily the Fed was managing the deflation of the non-bank financial sector. All of these vehicles that have been floated on Wall Street, whether with asset-backed securities, mortgage backs, SIVs, which almost took Citigroup down. And this was Wall Street's way, and really America's way, of getting access to even more credit than the banking system could support. Now it's all collapsing on itself, and what we're seeing is the legacy, the record that the Fed has now very kindly provided to us of what they had to do to essentially prevent the whole economy from falling in on itself.
And so when we give, I saw Goldman Sachs at the peak took $24 billion, I guess.
That's right.
And Goldman said, oh, we didn't need any money, we don't need anything.
Oh, no, they would have failed.
They took. Yeah. So when the U.S. taxpayer was nice enough to give Goldman Sachs $24 billion,
that's right.
Goldman Sachs benefited the U.S. taxpayer by doing what?
By doing nothing. They went off to make money for their shareholders again. The benefit.
So it's only the threat that if you don't give me the money, I'll destroy everything.
Yeah, but that's not a good argument. You see, the Fed was set up to help the real economy when Wall Street periodically destroyed itself. So the folks at the Fed have become so corrupt and so captured by the banking industry that we've turned the whole thing on its head.
So what does that mean for my mother?
Well, the Fed is now there to support the speculators, and they let the real economy go to hell. That's the bottom line.
And this data just confirms how expensive it is to support the speculators.
Well, not only
is that fair?
But the impact, the negative effect of the speculation, especially in residential mortgages, was so awful that the Fed had to come to the aid of big corporations, too, which were cut off from commercial paper.
I looked at the list. I mean, obviously GE, which is hugely dependent in it.
And here's
but
the thing.
McDonald's, Harley-Davidson, I mean, the list is no joke.
Verizon. But the thing is, you hear the administration, you hear Fed officials talking about corporations sitting on big cash balances. It's because they have to. They're terrified. They're worried about losing market access first, but they're
What does that mean, losing market access to what?
To be able to go out and issue commercial paper
to be able to raise more money. They're afraid that they'll get cut off again.
Right. And the other thing is, because they're so uncertain about the market, they have to keep more cash, say you're Cisco or Ford or whoever, to finance your customers. Because you can't take that account receivable, that money,
and go to the bank
and discount it. That's right. The non-bank sector, the gray market as they called it, was essentially a big sea of vehicles with different kinds of paper inside, and they sold bonds to investors to liquefy it.
And the investors were pension retirees and pension funds.
Everybody. That's right. So the whole system essentially, because of the speculative nature of these assets, think of the money market funds that are on that list. The ones that weren't affiliated with banks would have failed.
Yeah.
They would have broken the buck, and that would have been it.
So when we look at where we spend our time on this show, lack of jobs, lack of investment, lack of problem solving. Like I said, I don't care. You can cut taxes, print money. I'll give you money any way you want it. If the only incentive is to take it out of the country, and I get how central is this dysfunction to the lack of lending and lack of investment in America?
Oh, totally. Because the Fed has used this bailout. They've used quantitative easing, low interest rates, to avoid restructuring these banks. Until you restructure, you're not going to grow. You can't provide new credit to the real economy. You can't grow jobs because these banks have to continue to shrink.
And why do they not want to restructure these banks in order to actually drive investment in this? Is it because, is it as cynical as somebody like I say, look, 40% of all political contributions come from the banks, and they're not going to get...
Well, I deal with this in my book. Nothing has changed. The banks have owned the Washington equation. They've owned the Fed since day one. And it's just gotten worse. You know, Teddy Roosevelt, one of my favorite presidents, said, "We will not live under kinder masters." And he was referring to the big corporations. What's happened is that the individual has been so subordinated in our system that we don't even have a chance to debate the issues you raise on this show.
It's crazy.
If we were to restructure our banks, that keeps the money here. The foreign bondholders take a loss. And then we could get on with doing the right thing, which is putting that money to work to grow the economy again. Well, but let me say this. The thing about, you were talking before about tax cuts. The thing is the Republicans were trying to incrementally boost the economy with those tax cuts, but they don't want to address the real issue, which is spending. If they're not going to cut back the size of the state from that 25% that member of Congress
that Chaffetz was talking
down to below 20 or lower, you know, even going back to Reagan, I was a great supporter of Ronald Reagan, but they didn't do the work. They cut taxes, but they did nothing to really slow down spending.
Because the easy political thing is to cut the taxes
and you see this in Europe, too. The Europeans, the U.S., we have the same problem. If we don't cut back the state and take the pain, then we're going to be in malaise for years.
And restructure the banks to drive investment. It's easy to cut taxes.
Well, look at Ireland. They're messing around with Ireland and Europe. Wait till we get to Spain. Spain is worse than Ireland.
All right, listen. That's what they call a tease in the university. Chris Whalen says, wait till they get to Spain. Congratulations on the book.
Thank you,
newly published, again, Inflated, How Money and Debt Built the American Dream. If you want to learn more about why there are not jobs in this country, why there is not investment in this country, and how the financial system is central to that fact, I suggest not only that you pick up Chris's new book, but that you familiarize yourself with Chris's writings in general. Perhaps one of the most effective and astute voices in this country right now in explaining why it is we lack investment through this systematic corruption and how that is playing out throughout every aspect of our country.
There you have it. That's how they're doing it. They're sending the money out of the country. They're not keeping it here. The corporations aren't able to put it away. They're hoarding their money. They're not hiring anyone. They're afraid that they don't have money to back up their customers when they need to produce and make products for them here in America. And they've sent everything overseas anyways. So this has all been just a big flub up by the feds and everyone trying to get greedy. They're greedy and they're destroying the country. And you just heard it from the horse's mouth. We're not going to fix it until the banksters stop stealing the money. Until next time, this is Spellbinder. Be good or be good at it.